Hello, ladies. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's another fun week at Passionflix / working from home.
Yeah, slash in the office, not really in the office, kind of in the office.
Exactly.
Tosca's sitting right there next to me in the office.
In two offices down,
Separate offices.
separated by multiple walls and glass windows.
Totally makes sense. And so
Distance.
for people just joining us this week, or for people just listening, I'm Lauren, and I'm the Director of Development here at Passionflix.
I'm Allie. I'm the Director of Marketing and PR.
And I'm Tosca. I'm the founder and CEO of Passionflix.
Wonderful. So I thought before we introduce our lovely guest for today, we could do a little update on things we've been doing this past week. Myself, we've been getting some more scripts written for some shorts, which has been exciting. And I've been reading a few more books, which we might acquire / it'll be fun. You know, just the classic development stuff.
Yeah. I'm looking at my calendar over there. Can I do a quick flash over there of our
You
dream?
know people will freeze that frame. You can't show them.
Don't show it, yeah.
It's pretty intimidating, guys. It's like, it's this world of color-coded Post-its on my entire wall. I'm going to do it really, really fast. There we go.
Okay. That I can deal
That was
with.
so fast, I didn't even know what that was.
Right, exactly. Super fast. Don't freeze the frame. These are Post-its because they move around.
Yeah.
They move around depending on how the world feels that particular moment on
You
filming.
should tell people what the Post-its represent.
Oh, each one of those Post-its represents the start and stop date of a film production and the release of another one. So it's like, yeah, there are many, many colors on there, and we had to get more and more colors. Did Lauren freeze? Oh, no.
Like, I got sidetracked.
Like, oh, no.
I got sidetracked by a text from our guest, but we're all good. She's
Oh,
just,
good.
I'm ready.
So we're trying to figure out, what's logistically what we can film, when we can film. We're also ready to film. We've been spending this time developing the scripts and prepping everything. And so as soon as we get any kind of green light with regards to the state where we can actually film, it'd be great. Can I say what I read the Los Angeles stuff yesterday? I don't know if anybody is interested to know, but it was the most bizarre thing. In order to get a film permit in Los Angeles right now, they're like, we would like you to make films, we'd like you to prioritize movies that where people don't touch. I'm like, well, okay, it's not going to be us. And then they're like, and before each take, actors must wash their hands, and during performance they may not touch their face or anybody else's face. I'm like, so that's going to be a problem. Like,
Yeah.
how do we get past that? But I mean, we're working on it. But it's so interesting how, these little things that you have to get through. Hi, Margie. So anyway,
Yeah.
we're making our way through. We're looking all over the world to film.
Nice.
That's good.
Never quitting. I like
Yeah.
that. We gotta find our spot.
Yeah.
I know this week's kind of been a good week overall. Or last week was good, and we're next week we'll be making an announcement. Sorry, I'm getting my days mixed up. This week we'll be making an announcement about another series that we've optioned. So
Yes.
everyone should be on the lookout and be ready for that.
Very exciting. And actually, last week I had this great meeting with Red Carter, who wrote that original song for Gabriel's Inferno, The Side of Heaven. And we have a very exciting and cool thing coming up to celebrate that song. So, stick with us.
Very exciting. Awesome. Well, thank you for all the updates, ladies. And if we're feeling ready, I thought we could continue our lovely chats with our behind the scenes women, because we do work with women on our sets. We talked with Lindsay Shag last week, which was really great. And this week we have our lovely production designer, Traci Hays, joining us.
Fantastic.
I will let her into the room right now. Let's see, accept. I haven't seen her face in so long. This is going to be great. Oh no, where's Tracy?
Oh, it's a lovely bedroom.
Oh,
Of
no.
course, it's
Hi.
Tracy's perfectly
Hi.
decorated bedroom.
It's gorgeous. You must be a designer.
Hey, nice shirt.
Thanks. I was like, I was like, it's been a minute, but I have a few.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh my goodness, it's been so long.
It's so nice to see you.
I'm like, when are we having another cheese and cheese board and wine night? I'm like,
Oh,
Come on over. Come on over anytime.
although I'm like, I feel like I probably should watch my carb intake has somehow gotten worse over the last 5 months.
Yep. Quarantine.
It's-
So,
Yeah, the quarantine. What is it? The quarantine 15? What is it? What are they calling?
Yep.
oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I don't even-
I hate being on camera, so this is kind of a big deal. I'm just saying.
Oh, you look great.
I'm like, I can't. I'm like, you're just like, this is why I'm behind the camera.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate joining us despite the camera shyness.
Yeah, I saw the I'm curious because I know I've seen all the podcasts with the actors, and it's cool that you guys are expanding because there's all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All the stuff that we do. It is a lot. And so I'm so glad to have you here, Tracy, who has been with us on almost every single Passionflix movie. So you've designed almost every single one. You didn't do
7?
The Protector because we shot in England.
Right.
And was there one other that you didn't do?
There was I think I've done 7. I was actually counting the other day. I'm like, how many have I done? I think there's just 2 or 3. No, well, anything, the Protector, and then when you guys shot in Georgia, I believe.
Oh, yes, Hollywood
There's a
Turf.
few. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ah,
And
keeping
so-
around.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
and-
it's nice to be back, considering we were, Tots was like, you want to go to the East Coast in the winter? I'm like, California girl. I'm like, great.
Oh no, yeah.
I have so many stories.
Winter's coming up again.
Don't you dare.
And so, well, before I thought we delved more into the Passionflix side of things, because you have done a lot of films with us, I thought we could talk a little bit about something we might not know is how you got your start out here in Hollywood or working on films, and specifically in design, because that's a very niche world to go into sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I think I started, I was always creatively inclined, I think, from an early age, because I wasn't really good at reading. I still have dyslexia. And so I looked at pictures and books, and my parents were very, allowed me to be creative and go on field trips. And I think that was why I was homeschooled through junior high, was so I didn't have that experience of being bullied or not being able to learn at my own pace. So I think that creativity was sort of, if you can trace it back to like your younger days of like, oh, I can see where it went, like redecorating my parents' backyard. I have like sketches of like re-landscaping it and buying old wheelbarrows and, stuff. My dad's like, why do you have all this old junk? And I'm like, I'm going to plant a garden. It's going to look so pretty. Like, let me, so I think it started there. And then in terms of specifically film, I watched a lot of MGM musicals, Singing in the Rain, My Fair Lady, Sound of Music, those were like classic, movies. And I don't know if, the younger audience knows what VHS tapes are, but that was a thing.
Yes,
And
it
we got our like 3 movie a week, like maximum, because, we didn't want to do late fees with rentals. So we got each kid got to pick out the VHS tape.
Nice.
And a lot of it was musicals, like family wholesome, dramas, musicals. And so we each got 3. We went to the local video store, and that's kind of how the film side of it kind of became a pattern with the family movie night, every Friday night. So
We did something very similar, but we did ours with Sunday, and we had to check out all of these Judith Krantz novels that were being adapted into these miniseries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I did like,
Yeah.
so like all the Danielle Steele and Judith Krantz, so that's, so we basically have followed that trend, I guess.
I was like, you're doing that now. Like, I love
Exactly.
how adapting books. I think like, well, Wizard of Oz was a book originally, a children's book. So I think that was like the first vivid memory of like starting to understand like have a concept what film was, because I was pretty young. But then once Lord of the Rings came out, which was, I believe I was like 13. I don't know. I think I was in high school when that came out, the first film, and then behind the scenes. And I was like, my mind exploded, and I'm like, they can do this. They create this fantasy world. Like, I was blown away with just like the sets, the costumes. Like, Viggo Mortensen was like my like big crush for years. I'm like, oh my God, the long hair. Like, so, you know, I watched all those films, and I think that's kind of where the filmmaking side of it, what the concept of it, oh, you could actually make a living doing this, you know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Became
I also
yeah.
fell in love with the behind the scenes videos. Like,
right, I watched them more than movies. I think, I swear, I watched, and then the subtitles. I started doing that. Like, that was, oh, I guess, yeah, you learned a lot. You got to see the inside perspective of the director, the production designer, like all these different people, right. And in what scene you're like, oh my God, he broke his foot in that scene. You're like, I never knew, you know. So stuff like that. Right. So yeah, that's where it started.
So what you're saying is we need to start doing some commentaries on our movies.
Oh my gosh, that would be so fun. I think
it would be fun, wouldn't it?
Out of it, because you're like, remember that scene, like that day, and it snowed, and we couldn't, you know, all those things. You're like, oh, they
remember
have
that
no
day
idea.
when I was like, hey, Tracy, I need you to create an apple orchard.
Oh, God.
On the soundstage. On the soundstage. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I was like inside going like, oh my God, this isn't gonna work. You know, like, how do you not panic inside every day? Every day you're just like, oh.
Yeah. Or hey, so all the apples are no longer on the trees in the orchard because they had this massive wind blowing the day before shooting. What do you think we can do?
Yeah, I love weather. I love East Coast weather. Leave it at that.
How about we paste 750 red apples to these trees?
If only they knew.
And now they do.
And so Tosca's hitting on this already, but I thought for our viewers who are very not film savvy on the behind the scenes, like you mentioned, could you delve a little bit deeper into kind of what goes into the art department prep, and then during shooting, like what each role is? What don't we do? That's the question. I was like, I think it also, I will say, every film requires a different need in terms of prep. You know, sometimes we're all location dependent with a lot of Passionflix films specifically, and then obviously just when you start looking at building set pieces or whole, you know, rooms, or in this case a penthouse, I think you just have to, it's just a different way, and you kind of have a different skill set with the team that you hire. So in pre-production, you know, the first thing is to look at the script and then delve into it, you know, with Tosca and Dennis, and start to understand, okay, what's the book saying, what's the script saying, obviously like how to create a world that it's still sort of true to the book, but also something that you can, you know, put your own vision around it. So I think with art, with the art department, like we do everything from, you know, we'll hire people to come in that focus on the props. That's their only job. They look through the script, and everything the actors touches becomes a prop. And then their job is to go find all those items and put in a breakdown, do, you know, show and tell, like see if we like everything. I mean, there's so many little departments within the, you know, the arts department, you know, the art director's working with me and getting the approved drawings, and then going to the construction coordinator, who's then talking to his builders about this wall, and then the scenic painters talking to them about the, you know, color of the wall. Then I'm talking to my set decorator about, okay, what's in the space and where are we going to go shopping? What's the tone, the texture? So you kind of just start creating this world. You know, the difference with building and locations is you're just looking at the location and going, okay, what are we allowed to do? What can't we do? What are we not allowed to move? Art clearances, and you start dealing with, like, you know, what we're going to replace, what we're going to see. So it just, you know, the mise en scène, I like to throw that fancy word out there. Like,
mise-en-scène, and we're just responsible for everything visually, you know,
Yep.
in the film, you know. So
anything that goes in front of the act, anything that goes in front of the camera that's not an actor. And even then, sometimes when it comes to actors, it will be coordinating the actor's clothes based on the color palette that we come up with at the very beginning. So oftentimes, as a director, I'll touch base with Tracy, production designer, and go, okay, here's our palette, here's what we're thinking, you know, we'll just come up with these ideas together, and then we'll bring in the costume designer and go, these are the colors that we're thinking. The costume designer will make sure that the actors are wearing a certain color, and that it doesn't clash with the, you know, the walls and the and
you don't
the
want someone wearing a red shirt on a red couch, like, unless that's intentional, obviously, but like you
Right.
don't want to. You're like, oh my God,
Right.
you know, that's why it's always awkward and funny when you see actors sitting on furniture. You're like, what are they doing? You know, and they're just like looking at wardrobe. You're like, oh no, it's all intentional. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Everything is placed. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, Lauren. But,
But I love it. I actually just want to touch on some of those things. I remember. Oh gosh, now I'm forgetting. But it's like all those different things. Because I'm like, oh, I remember. Like, for example, when we're talking about Gabriel's Inferno and the art director, is the person that Tracy works with to physically design the room that we're building. And so basically it starts with Tracy and I sitting in a meeting, and then, okay, so, and Tracy's like, okay, so I see the room like this, and I'm like, okay, this is how I see it. And I think on Gabriel's Inferno for the condo, I was like, here's my piece of paper, here's how I see it, and the bedroom's here, and this is here, and this is there, and I just kind of like blocked out where I wanted to put things. And then Tracy's like, okay, now I'm going to take that, go to the art director and say, how can you build this on this stage? And then what elements are we going to use for the half wall, for the fireplace, for all these other items that that will just add an extra element. And for me, I remember one of the things that was so important for me for Gabriel's Inferno was, when I just pictured this from the very beginning of shooting, was how Julia was going to leave Gabriel's apartment after the night when he remembers her as Beatrice, right? And then the next morning he forgets. And I was like, okay, the only thing, I need Gabriel to be standing by the kitchen, and I need to see Julia come out of his room and go through the hallway and all the way, then talk, then go to the door and put on her shoes there and exit. But all of it, I want to be able to see from the kitchen, while having these sort of the slats, or what we came up with those slats ideas,
wooden
and then
slats. You could
the wooden
see
slats, and you built those wooden slats. And I was like, that's really important for me to be able to see that. And so Tracy then comes up with ideas of how I can see all that, and how those slats are built, and what's the width of those slats, and what's the fireplace going to be like, and what's the color going to match, and then so that I can get this sort of epic shot that I dream of getting. And then I got it. I thought it worked really well.
And you know, those are those kind of situations where, you know, being able to build a lot of your environment from scratch, you can plan your shots like that, versus when we're at a location, we work differently. It's not about like, oh, let's move that wall. And you're like, well, unfortunately, that's somebody's home. So you're kind of like, I don't think they're gonna like that structurally, and you know, it's the roof might fall in. So it's like, how do you? Then it becomes more of a, you know, problem solving with a location.
Yeah.
You know, it just, you maybe, and then that's why you end up going on a scout for like 2 weeks, and you're like banging your head against the wall because you're like, oh, I've seen 25 homes and nothing's exactly what I want. Yeah. You have to weigh the budget, time, the things that you gain. Is it worth it? Anyway, it's all of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And so and then people who don't know, I know Tosca kind of touched on it, but could you delve a little bit deeper into what the difference between an art director and a production designer is?
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of like a strange marriage couple, you know. They're like
and that is you and Eric.
I know, we're like we call it, we always joke around like the work wife, the work husband, you know. It's that idea of communication, but like Tosca was saying, where you like the initial conversation happens between the director and the production designer, and then they build out an approved look for the whole film or the the set, the state, whatever that might be. And then I go off to my art director and I'm like, how do we do this? And they're in charge of, they look over the budget. They basically execute the plan, the approved plan. And that can take on a myriad of different things, just because depending on what the budget calls for and what the script needs are. But that's I guess the simplest way to explain it is just, and it's a creative partnership, right. But they're more focused on executing it, hiring people, like looking over each department, checking in with each of them, that sort of thing. So
nice.
Yeah. And then Tracy will bring me into, I'm just like thinking, I'm like, these awesome memories. But when we were building Julia's apartment, when you were building Julia's apartment in Syracuse, New York, and it would just be like, okay, so Tosca, here's, and I'm like, okay, well, it's basically a rectangle, and then she has a bathroom to the side, and they're like, yes, but what if we create this little cubby nook over here? And then they just bring me into Tracy's office or Eric's office at the time, and they'd show me the schematic on like a Photoshop. It's called SketchUp. Yeah. And I'm like, well, it could work, but what if we move the door to the bathroom here? And then he just sits there and he just moves. He moves the door, and then it creates this 3D rendering of the room. And it's almost like looking at it's a computer graphic, so it looks like a video game. And
you can do almost like what they call you plan it out. You can plan out your shots, because you can basically be in a 3D environment instead of, obviously back in the day before we had computers, it was all like hand drafting and blueprints, and that was, I didn't have to really do any of that, but it's helpful. Cool. It's really helpful.
Yeah. And then we're like, just make it a little bigger, just make it a little smaller. And then like each time you make it bigger, it's like, well, that's going to be expensive. I'm like, I want the windows to be like this. Glass doesn't come in that size, Tosca. So how about if we do it like this? Okay.
Yeah.
Tracy, what was the first Passionflix project you worked on?
It was after Burn Aftershock, and I was the art director on that.
Oh. That was my first one too.
I was gonna say that's when I met Lauren. That was the first thing I worked on.
But I wasn't sure if you'd worked on Hollywood Dirt, so that's so funny. We worked the
first film together. Yeah, but then pretty much ever since then, it's been everything in town, and then obviously with the exception of going to New York and New Jersey. So
I remember being very impressed on After Burn Aftershock specifically, because it felt like one of the first days on set. Maybe I'm just kidding. It's the only location that really sticks out to me, but that fancy ass building where his apartment was.
Oh, that was the first day.
The first day. That's why it sticks out.
Those were the first 3 days of the shoot. Oh, wow.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was anyway. Yeah, that was fun. She got to plan her. Yeah.
And you basically had to build room by room, because that one bedroom was so small. You had to like move furniture in specific ways. It was genius.
It's like the chaos of like what's in the frame. Everyone's like, oh, it looks so beautiful, but if you look outside of this frame, it's just like chaos.
And I definitely remember from being on like the PA/AD side, I'd occasionally see you or other departments freak out if the camera shifted and suddenly there was this whole new background you could see, and you're like,
I was just like,
it's actually, it's one of the most, this is one of the most hilarious and I imagine frustrating things, because it's, we'll sit there and I'll go to Tracy. I'm like, Tracy, I'm never going to see there. I'm never going to look there. And she's like, I guarantee you, if you say that, Dennis is going to point the camera there and not actually be sitting in the corner. And what's so funny, so now when we go into a set, it's decorated like soup to nuts everywhere. And Dennis will just be like, he goes, why is everything so, the whole room is decorated. We're never going to see in that corner. And I'm like, listen, Tracy built it. We're seeing in that corner. So you turn the camera over there.
I just have too much experience. I have so many DPs. I'm always like, we're never going to see that. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm like, dress it anyway.
Yeah.
Something always happens. You're like, yeah, you're definitely going to see that.
with Christmas movies, it'd be like, cool, so we're setting lights here, and then never mind, Tosca thinks it's too Christmassy, so we're gonna remove some, or like things like that. I remember that from Dirty Sexy Saint. It was all about balance, and it was so
I know. I really was like, all Christmassy and excited about it, and but it was nice because it was subtle Christmas. It wasn't like Hallmark Christmas, you know. It was very like, it's just in the background. But I was like, but I love Christmas, you know. Balance.
That was actually funny. I remember because on Dirty Sexy Saint, when we had all those Christmas lights up in the bar, and then I was looking at them, I was like, there's too many Christmas lights. There's just too many. It's just too much in my face. And so your on-set dresser, who you also met on one of our shows as well, but your on-set dresser.
We'll get to that.
We would basically go back there, and the string of Christmas lights that we have there, he'd be like, should we block this one out? And then he would just like tape over them so that we only had a few, and he would just hide a few of the lights. So I was like, okay, that's better. Now I feel like, no, hey, there's a red one. I want the red one gone, and let's see the green one.
You're like,
there.
Oh, you know, yeah.
It gets so
very
specific times, but it all works out in the end, which is nice. And I thought Tracy, you could also mention what's been different for you personally with art direction and production design. How it's different working on a book adaptation versus any other film that's just a script. Like, is it? I'm guessing it's probably a little bit more complicated because there's.
Well, I think I'm terrified because I don't want to screw it up, you know, because when you have a book, you're like, you know, with a film where you've got, especially an original idea, not like a comic, like if there's no built-in audience, if it's just a strict like original film, whatever genre that might be, you really are creating the groundwork for whatever. There's no pre-existing, you know, IP. It's just, this is the script. And so you really get the opportunity to really infuse your vision. And it's not to say that I want it on other films, but I just think there's more, you know, there's just a different way of working because when you start working on a book adaptation. Now some I've worked on, I'm trying to think, where you know, it was about the essence, like, you know, it's like a season 2 of a show, for example, I worked on, and they wanted the essence of what season 1 looked like, but it wasn't like every single prop had to be exactly where it was. It was more like, this is the essence of it, and just try to work from there. But with specifically Passionflix, and, you know, just knowing the community and realizing like how important and just the details and just being appreciative of what they do. Like, I mean, I remember times where I even missed stuff and I was getting notes tossed to me like, so that fern in, you know, Gabriel's apartment, I'm like, there's a fern? I was like, oh my God, I missed the fern.
Potted
palm. Like, you know, and I'm just like, those little moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, like so I think there's just a level of responsibility and like at the same time terror of like, am I going to screw this up? You know, where you're like really, you know, but why? But because you don't know. I mean, you just kind of have to go in there and just go, this is what, when I read it, this is how I see it, as close to the book. Like, I'm not going to make Gabriel's chair purple, right? I mean, like, that's not a,
right.
If it was something subtle, like we get the essence of a character, you know, and some other franchises aren't, I feel like, as specific. Like, I would say some writers don't write details like wall color, you know, so you have a little bit more freedom with other books and writers where they're not like wanting everything so specific. But I think that lends itself to the style of the writing for that individual. So I would say some Passionflix films, we actually had a lot more creative freedom in that way than others.
Nice.
It doesn't make it less enjoyable. I just think it's just a different kind of challenge, you know?
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I loved your attention to details on Gabriel's Inferno, because we would sit there and be like, okay, in his home, there's all these statues. What are we going to do? And then you would hunt down all these statues from all over the place. Like, and how can we get all these statues from like the world, I guess, basically. You were looking everywhere. And then we chose some artwork of statues instead of the actual statues, because sometimes getting those statues is
it was so expensive.
Unbelievably expensive.
I had frankly not, that was, you know, what I love about production design is you're like, okay, I've never done this before. Like, really, like, there's certain things that you've just never done before. And you're like, oh, you know, the myriad of like, oh, snow, or, you know, like a statue, whatever it might be in every film. But I was like, the cost doesn't So like it's still honoring the book because there's a statue, but like you said, it's not a physical, like there's just, we wouldn't have the funds to make all the other sets. It would have suffered.
But
You
also
know,
the
you got the
space.
one thing. Yeah, it's just.
But also the space, right? The home itself wouldn't be able to actually fit in a statue of that size. And so, well, for us at least, in the home that we created. And so, so trying to honor the book, honor all the artwork that is written in the book, make sure that we give it the right level of respect and put it into the space in such a beautiful manner, still sticking with our color palette, right? So keeping in mind that we have those blue curtains, the red chairs, the chocolate couch, all these things were very important to our overall look, and it's described in the book. And I remember you and I going on and on about what color taupe are the walls, because taupe is so many different colors. We would be
were just like freaking out about like each color, each room. I was just like, how do you honor that? But I think in the end, it
amazing.
And keeping in mind, a book is not a movie, so you can't, like, what you read in a book will not always be flattering on camera. So you have to understand skin tone and wall color and all these things that like are gonna make the scene more dynamic, visually interesting, versus like, oh no, it needs to be exactly. I'm like, well, that won't look good on camera. So how does that help us? So there's a mix, a balance.
Yeah, Tracy, I know into different roles, such as you directing for Passionflix in just a minute, but as a production designer, art director, can you tell us some of your favorite moments?
From films, you're saying working on set. I mean, recently, obviously, I know we keep going back to Gabriel's just because it was fresh in our minds and we've worked on it for longer than other films. But I think for me, like, obviously doing the show and tell, like having Tosca come on the sets and just especially the first reveal of his apartment, like that was really special because I think, that was just like, and watching, the actors come in space and just having them sit in the red chair and like he said, oh, I felt my power. I'm like, that's like really special for an actor because I think it allows them to really get inside, this is their home ultimately, and like how they can inform their performance. And that's the beauty of those two worlds colliding. So that's the most rewarding part of the job, I think, at the end. I mean, obviously the whole way through, there's a lot of fun moments, but I think on those set, like just that specific moment or, I've always had this this like secret obsession of like doing window styling. Like I love like window shopping. So when we did Trouble with Mistletoe, I was like so obsessed like with designing all the storefronts for Christmas because I love Christmas and I love storefronts. So that was like a fun little thing. Like, what other chance would you have to do something like that, or just being able to get to go to all these great locations, throughout upstate New York, when we were in New Jersey, and then just the Malibu house where we shot Driven. Stunning, like incredible. Beautiful, like you just, and it just, being on location can really add to the performance, the design, and it's just so, it's just nice. Like, when would you be in a $10 million whatever home in Malibu on a location scout? Like I've seen more
actually,
homes.
I love that you think it's $10 million. It's actually on the market, I think, right now for about 40 million. So
see, I need we
have no concept.
I know, right? I'm just like the market is crazy right now, especially in LA. But
we've had our fun moments on these sets, which has been great. And I definitely thought though you were going to mention meeting Jessie as your favorite moment.
Oh well, we could go into that. I know, right?
Let's jump into that. Talk about
technically, I technically knew him before Passionflix. Technically, I knew him before then.
Yeah. Tracy, you have to tell everybody who Jessie is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we'll go there. Yes, I love it. No, I love it because I know Tosca's always like, I take credit for, and I love it. We always joke around about it because, we're busy, women, never have time, working crazy hours. And I was on Afterburn Aftershock, And I had worked with Jesse on jobs prior to that. We had worked on various projects. And during that project, he had been a production assistant and then kind of moved his way towards art department, lead man. I don't know. For those that don't know, it's basically the person who does all the pickups, goes to prop houses, basically makes sure everything that we're looking at for each set arrives in one piece to each location or each set. So he sort of worked his way up. So because of that, we ended up spending more time together. And so Afterburn Aftershock was the first film where, as the art director, he was working on my team the whole time. And, it's like we were children about it. Honestly, it's that cute romance where we're working on a romantic film, and throughout the film, because the thing is, you want to be professional and know that you're doing your job, and that, there's always a little oh, we're just going to keep it secret for as long as possible, So we actually went on our first date the last day we were filming at the Italian restaurant in Afterburn. Yeah, so we went on our first date.
I figured it out on Matchmakers. You were trying to keep it hidden, and I saw you guys one time, not kissing or anything, but you were just chit-chatting, and I'm like, what's going on there?
Yeah, so we it was really cute, and we gave our whole crew gave a shit the whole time, because they all were like, no, we were hiding, but it was a really cute, the whole story is just really cute, and we still work together to this day on, he even came in for a week on Gabriel's when he came to visit. So it's, it's really nice when it works out because I know some couples can't or don't enjoy working together. They like to keep that separate. But for us, it really was it's just easy going. We have fun, But yeah, it happened on Afterburn.
So some of you might not know. So firstly, Jesse, of course, is your boyfriend. But some of you might not know that Jesse is also the bouncer in the bar, in the nightclub in Driven.
No. Oh no.
I was gonna ask if I could point that out, T. I was gonna be nice.
Well, it's done now.
But I feel like
what? It's fine.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It's fine. So if you want to check out some of our crew sometimes ends up in the background of shots, and he's the guy who moves the rope for Colton.
Wait, you have no idea how much pleasure and enjoyment that gave me to see him. He hated it. And he hated it.
I was there.
He didn't hate it.
I was there.
Well, internally, I can see it all over his face.
But
if he hated it, I wouldn't have made him do it. I didn't make him do it. I asked him to do it.
He was he enjoys, helping. So I don't think I just think it's funny. I like giving him crap about it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Jesse is one of the sweetest, nicest people in the world. So I'm so glad that you two are together. And also such an awesome guy to have on set. You'll often see, he was with us on Dirty Sexy Saint the entire time on set as the set dresser, and it was always just so awesome for David, Gregory, and Jordan and Price. They just loved him because he worked very closely with them, because with the on-set dresser, he's always around them. He's helping them with their props, and he helped create the shower and all these things, but he's the person that's there to help us on set and put things in front of the camera. And David would always joke about how David's I'm really strong, but then you see Jesse and he's just walking, he's just holding the couch.
Yeah, right.
Walking with the couch.
Just carrying a whole table by himself. Yeah, exactly.
No, I know. I think he enjoyed, especially working with them. It's nice to have people that are so easygoing and enjoy that
really
process.
Lucky with them. They were great. And I thought we could also now jump into your directing for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people don't know or might not have noticed until now, but you directed Dry Spell, one of our.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I think the biggest thing is trusting that when it comes to the brand and the subject matter is after I'd done a few films with Passionflix and with you, Tosca, I think just understanding, I remember the conversation we had about just how what the company was trying to do with romance and storytelling and what we wanted to stay away from. And, being on set and in that environment and seeing over the films, just like, it was an easy understanding of like, okay, with dry spell, like these are the kinds of shots, this is the kind of angle, these are the kind of motivations. And having my history with going to film school and studying design and directing, I'm a visual storyteller. So it kind of, to me, it's a kind of a marriage of the two of my two loves. So it was really fun to, it was a small intimate crew, but that was great because, it was like, okay, we're gonna, you're gonna direct your first 2 sex scenes in the same day. And I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be crazy, but it was, but it's about having taste and being comfortable and making sure everybody else was comfortable with what was going on and just giving each other permission and all. So I feel like, the difference is instead of, working on the visual aesthetic of the design. Now, not to say that I didn't, obviously that was heavily a part of the process with locations and color palette, but also then looking at the story and the story beats and where, so all of that it's interesting. My process kind of starts the same for either sort of whatever I'm doing, because I want to put on the character's thinking cap and be in the world. So it's hard not to think about it 24/7, like all the time. Writing, listening to music, doing mood boards, like watching films, like all that to me is just part of my process. So it was really a fun transition to work with a lot of the same people that worked on the features and bringing in other collaborators and friends from film school. And there's nothing more fun than being able to do your job well and be with friends and people that are also collaborative. So
yeah. Well, we have a bunch more shorts that we're going to be filming soon, Tracy. So be prepared on both sides.
I'm ready.
Oh, awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. So Ali.
Yeah, no, I know we had some questions from our founding members, Tracy.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Mira asked, what was the most challenging item for you to replicate or find across any film?
That's easy. Well, I mean, for me, it stands out because it was the most, in my opinion, it was like, like going back to Lord of the Rings or The Wizard of Oz, it's like Dorothy's red slippers or Frodo's ring, like to me, that was the red chair in Gabriel's Inferno. Like, I knew we had to get that like spot on, and we spent a lot of time. And for those of you, so shooting outside of any major hub like Atlanta or New York City or Los Angeles, or places that kind of have an infrastructure, there's just a different way of working. So I was a little nervous because we bought the chair that instead of rented it. We bought the chair for the red chair, and then we had it upholstered by a gentleman who upholsters furniture for the White House. So that's how much I wanted to get it right.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Like, yes, so that chair is like, that had to be done. I was like, it had to be done perfectly.
Yeah.
There.
And it looks great. It is really perfect. So
yeah,
it was hard to find, but we did.
That's cool. Christina asked, is there any one piece or item that you weren't sure about at first, but once you saw it on set, it all came together?
It's so funny. I always feel like that on every set where you're like, you've been doing this for so long, and you run around and you're like, none of this is gonna work, like this is your internal monologue of like, everyone's like, oh my God, you're so talented. I'm like, if only you knew what we talked ourselves into every day. Like the conversations we have of just, what I will say is whenever I'm on a set and I think I don't have enough, like I think I have too much for the space, I know that I have just enough, because that's a big, I don't think there's, I think there's like specific items that would or wouldn't work. I don't know. I just think I always get options, like especially if, I mean, with bigger pieces, we have to be specific, that becomes a money budgetary problem. But in terms of smaller stuff, I just buy options and then I try it. It's like what I would do for my own home, like I'm like, oh, I I tried 4 lamps and I didn't like any of them. And you know, like you have to like it.
Oh, no, what I do for my home.
Like, this is a free floor lamp I stole from the movie theater I used to work at.
Hey,
Exactly.
you know what?
I think I have an old lamp from my mom's house or something. Like, I did not do that.
But it's very impressive, Tracy, that at least from what I've noticed while working with you on sets and seeing you and Tosca interact, like she'd come and be like, we can't this, we need that, or you'd be like, okay, cool, we have these options, or you know, you'd always have that prepped, which was so good. So
the most hilarious thing is the lamps, actually, because we have this running joke on Passionflix, because lamps are such a big thing. Like, they're always in the background, but most people don't know what that lamp is. And so someone like Dennis will just pick the lamp up and just move it to a different spot. And Tracy's like, my God, you can't use that lamp. That lamp was used in that room on that set. And he's like, no one will ever notice, Tosca. And so you'll actually see me in the Matchmaker's Playbook. I don't know if you guys watched the behind the scenes, the Matchmaker's Playbook. And there I am. And we had those binoculars, right? Because the whole thing was the binoculars of going, you know, because we had these binoculars because it was funny. But we had that lamp in. I think I just walked around with the lamp at one point in the behind the scenes, because there was this lamp that Dennis just kept moving around the room, and it was like in this room, and it was in that room. He's like, we just gotta have this lamp.
That has become a running joke now, where like in every now, you know, a lot of the
now we have many lamp options.
Practical lighting, I think, to me, feels so much more organic than like blasting light through window, like it's motivational. So the joke is now. I'm like, well, Dennis, you do realize that half your lighting budget for practicals has to come out of your budget now, because I have to buy all these practicals for you now for every room of the set, you know? It's like,
and just for those that don't know, practicals means actual physical lights that will go on the frame. Like those ones, exactly. So those are called practicals for us, because it's not lit by the big lights that go behind the camera. It's things that'll actually be on the frame and could potentially light the scene or the actor's face. So it's very specific, and they have to look great, and they also still have to be able to give off the right light to the scene. So yeah, that was always fun. But I was going to say, one of the things that I thought, just following up on that question, one of the things that I remember us discussing, and again going to Gabriel's Inferno, we would be like, okay, what? Because was there a scene, a set, or something that we thought was not going to work, but then it did actually work really well? And I would say it's things like the coffee shop that you built, like in a couple of days. And like initially, like I was like, okay, Tracy, let's build a coffee shop here. And she's like, I don't. That's not okay. That's okay. We can do we can do this. And she's like, it's not going to work. Oh no, it's going to work. It's going to work. And it was like this sort of like battle inside. The art department is like, how the hell is this going to be a coffee shop? And then, like, within just a few like hours, I think, of you just looking at the space and coming up and you're like, I've got this idea of a coffee shop. And it was this beautiful idea. It was so cool and funky and so perfect for a college. But initially it was this deserted room in an abandoned library in Syracuse. And it was like, how are we going to build a coffee shop here? And I was like, okay, go Tracy. You can do it.
It's like, let's build a coffee shop in a whole university. I'm like, great, let's do it.
Yeah, you have a week.
I'm like, awesome.
And you did.
We did. So good question. That was a good question.
And Maggie asked, and I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, but do you get a written description from Passionflix from the book and then try to match? Do you go in and look at the book? I don't know if you, Yeah,
I mean, I love, I have an iPad, so I just download it on Audible or one of those, devices. And it's actually a lot better because you can do word searches for specific items, which makes it a lot easier.
Super.
I think that was, I've definitely, with other films, I would like briefly look at the book, but like with the script. But with Gabriel's Tosca specifically, she's like, you got the book. She's just like, you gotta look at the book. And it was like paragraphs of description. And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I was like terrified because I'm just like, oh, I have to get all this right, you know? So I think it depends on the writer, like I said earlier, but I would say we go off the script. And a lot of scripts, you know, you don't want to have a 120 page script with description. So a lot of that stuff gets trimmed down to just the, you know, sort of a brief understanding of the environment or location. And then the dialogue obviously is very important. But to have that, the amount of description in a book is never appropriate, frankly, for a script, because then you end up with a too long of a script. So.
Yeah, we generally in the scripts, the things that I do insist now on going into the script are normally if the actor's wearing anything in particular. I'm, you know, wearing a black spaghetti strapped dress and her hair is down and curly. Those are the things that we write down very specifically into scripts, but for the most part, location wise, we don't put too much unless it's specific, like she sits in the red chair. And then it has to be that specific, but otherwise we don't tend to have too much description of a location in there, I don't think.
Yeah, so we'll just go back, we'll refer back to the book. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, good question.
And I
And
think that was it.
Oh, wow.
From the founding members, yeah.
From the founding members.
Cool.
So I do see one had asked kind of a double question, and you might have already touched on the fact that you like to window dress, like in with mistletoe and stuff. What are some of your favorite places to shop? I know you probably use props.
Oh.
I know you've made purchases before too.
What was that?
Purchases before, like some props you have to buy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, frankly, it's not really the set decorator's job. I mean, my union. I mean, I do it because it's frankly fun. Like I've since I was young, I would go to flea markets with my grandfather when I was about starting at like 9 or 10 years old. So I'd go every month, and I just loved the story behind the objects and like where it was from, and just, you know, I mean, you kind of see how it came full circle. So now, like, I love antique shopping. I love estate sales, and having lived on, you know, being born and raised on the West Coast, estate sales are not as big of a deal as they are on the East Coast. So my first actual experience was on when we did up in New Jersey, when we did Dirty Sexy Saint. I went to my first estate sale, and it was such a unique experience, because you feel like you're in somebody's home and their memories, and it's such a cool. So you know, for shopping, it's more just something I do on the weekends for fun. It's just something I enjoy. I think we did the majority of purchasing for the jobs that we did outside of Los Angeles, just because there's not the infrastructure to go to a prop house, or it's frankly more expensive just because of the area. So in Los Angeles, we mostly shop at like prop houses like Universal Studios, Warner Brothers, Modernica, Pinacoteca. I mean, I have relationships with all these wonderful vendors, and they've known me for years, so we get wonderful, you know, discounts and that sort of thing. So what will you say, Laura?
The only time I've been to Warner Brothers was I was working still as an assistant at the time with Passionflix, and we wrapped so fast on dry spell that they needed someone to do the prop drop off, so I did it at Warner Brothers, which was cool because I got to drive onto the lot and stuff. But I remember being like, I don't know where these boxes go.
Yeah.
But they find you, and they tell you where to go. But it was very cool.
Yeah,
it's so many things.
It is fun.
Crazy.
It's a little overwhelming. People are like, oh yeah, you know, just this couple things, and I'm like, have you been to the prop house? It is the size of a football field, 3 stories high. I mean, it's
like rows and rows of options.
Yeah, there's like 4. I brought my sister once with me to a prop house when she was visiting. This was, you know, maybe a couple years ago, and I'm like, can you pick out an ashtray? And she was just staring at
so many ashtrays,
different ashtrays, and she got stressed out, and she's like,
I couldn't
do your job. Like, and I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding? You're like, oh, well, this, you know, you just sort of get into the character and you go crazy. Okay. So, but personally, in terms of where I love to shop, I will put a shout out for CB2.
Right. Yeah.
It's Crate and Barrel's like modern design line, and West Elm.
Nice.
Yeah, of course. Very nice.
Good choices. Well, cool. Is there any other thing you want to say to our fans?
It's already been an hour.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow.
I'm having fun.
I'm like, we have so much catching up to do still. I just am glad that they, you know, I am appreciative of all the positivity and support, you know, that we've been given for all the projects that we've worked on so far. I feel like it's reassuring to know that the hard work is being, seen. Obviously we do it because we love it. It's our job. We enjoy what we do. But I think, there's definitely memories of individuals coming up and being like, oh my God, I cried when I walked into the set, and it's exactly how I imagined it, so that's the kind of feedback that's like really, you realize it's more meaningful, because some you work on projects, tons and tons, and some are like, they don't hold as much meaning because it's just, it's not something that's been built and they've read about it for years and years and years and years, and they've had it in their mind of what everything looks like. So that's really rewarding to see all that come together, and just, now it's we're going to carry on. I know the times are uncertain, but I think it's like creativity and storytelling is so important, to just our way of communicating. Like, I don't know what I would do. I think I'd go crazy if I couldn't do that. Like, I'm like, I have to communicate and do my job. So yeah, no, it's fun. I'm excited, for them to see rest of Gabriel's and all the surprises that come with it. And hopefully we will be back at it sooner rather than later.
Fingers crossed. That's the goal. We're gonna, please. I was saying yesterday, I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to get back to set. I've got to, this is the longest I've been not filming something, and it's really not as fun as filming something.
Well, especially because
you're back to my storytelling.
In your office and you're not connecting with other people. I mean, and then on top of that, you're not doing what you love. So there's all these, like, it definitely, there's phases of like, oh my gosh, I have a break, I'm depressed, I'm excited, all these emotions that I'm sure everyone's been feeling, but I hope that they can escape into the world of, fun and
passion.
Romance. Passion. Coin the term. Look at that.
Well, thank you again for joining us, Tracy. It was so good to see you.
Yeah,
I
know.
know. You, Tracy. I know. Thank you, ladies. I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Yes, we'll be talking good. Bye, darling.
Bye.
I
love Tracy. She's so good, and just such awesome. as a director. For me, she's such an incredible collaborator, and she's so determined to make everything perfect, and then also make sure that I'm happy with everything. So if I'm not happy, she'll immediately go and change it, and she has an option and has all these different things, and her team's there for us. So there's a desire to aspire to the best possible thing, and then this humbleness that also comes with it, because it might not be what the other person wants. It might be what she likes, but it won't be what the other person likes. And so that's a really incredible personality to have that.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And I'm glad that our fans got to hear a little bit more about her, to learn more about that, because that's the fun part of this podcast, is we can introduce them into more of like the author's deep thoughts, and then our crew as well, which is great.
Yeah. The next conversation that we're going to be having, just so you know, and I was like, I need to bring this up on the podcast, but then I totally forgot to Tracy, so I'll just tell her afterwards. But I'm like, how are we going to build the area, where Colton's racing? Oh. So she has to build that somehow. Nice. So that's going to be the next one.
Have fun, Tracy.
Awesome. All right. Well, I love you, ladies, and I will see you guys hopefully soon, and we will touch base next week on the next podcast.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.